With our Stomp WebSocket class complete, let's deploy a fully functional pxGrid WebSocket solution. Let's review the updates within the pxGrid.py module. Right away, we see several new imports. The Python WebSocket libraries are good, but not nearly as robust as the request library, so we need to do some things manually. Specifically, we need to import the base64 encoding function to manually construct our basic auth header. We also need to import SSL to tell the WebSocket client not to validate any certificates. Finally, we have to import the Stomp WebSocket class we just reviewed, giving us a wrapper for handling Stomp interactions. I've also defined a topic map. Different services have different keys containing their topic strings. Frankly, I think this is terrible API design since they could have just used the key name of topic. In any event, we need this dictionary to map the service name to the expected key name. Beyond that, let's review the updates. In the AuthorizeForService method, I've added a new keyword argument named WSSubscribe. The default value is false to maintain backward compatibility with our query radius script. After performing the service lookup like normal, we enter this if statement block. Each service that supports topic subscription identifies a WebSocket PubSub service. We need to extract that service name from the original service lookup response, which looks like this, as a reminder. Then, to get the topic, we have to reference the topic map so we index the right key. Later on, we'll include this topic in a stomp command within a WebSocket for telemetry subscription. Last, we need to perform a second service lookup for the PubSub service, updating the serve_resp variable. The else statement retains our old code that is specific to the HTTP API, collecting the REST base URL. This next block of code is unchanged since the access secret process is common for both HTTP API and WebSocket techniques. However, we need another if statement to perform WebSocket-specific actions once we have the access secret. First, we manually build a base64 encoded string containing the pxGrid username and the access secret we just defined. Again, our WebSocket library doesn't let us supply a two-tuple. Here's an example of what the string might look like once processing is complete. Then, we need to assemble the WebSocket headers and URL. The only header we need is the authorization header for HTTP basic auth. The WS URL comes from the PubSub service, and again, here's what that looks like. This is the target of the WebSocket. Finally, we're ready to create the Stomp WebSocket object, and we pass in the WebSocket URL and header dictionary. We also pass in the SSL options dictionary with the SSL.certNone option. This is the documented method for disabling SSL validation with our current WebSocket library. Once the WebSocket has been created, we'll start the process by subscribing to the specific topic we collected earlier in the method. Again, if we aren't using WebSockets, just create a service auth two-tuple for basic HTTP requests as seen in a previous demo. Next, let's review the subscriberadius.py script to test all these moving parts. The script is almost identical to the query radius one, so I'll focus on the new parts. After instantiating a pxGrid object to the DevNet sandbox, we'll activate a new pxGrid consumer node named GlobalListen. Then, we'll authorize that user for the service specified via command line arguments, except this time we'll set WSSubscribe to true. Everything else in the script is old news. Let's run the subscriberadius.py script and pass in the radius service. I'll quickly approve this new pxGrid user off camera. After the user is activated, we see some WebSocket logging. First, the WebSocket was opened, then we issue the connect command targeting the PubSub provider node. A second later, we issued the subscribe command to listen for any radius failures. pxGrid responds with a connected message to confirm our subscription. I've opened a new SSH session to the dev box so we can spoof some more radius messages. Let's run our sendRadius.py script again, which should generate some new activity. Alright, we get no output as expected. Let's go back to our main DevBox tab. Now, we see many stomp messages. Each one was part of subscription 0, the ID we set in our subscribe command. We can also see the JSON body dumped to the screen as plain text. This is the same JSON data we received using the query radius script, except now it is being streamed in real time. Let's use Control-C to terminate the program. That leads to the WebSocket being closed, as expected. I'd encourage you to play around with other services as well, because this is one of my favorite pxGrid features.